Let's talk about Poland. Obviously, your flagship country on the consumer lending side. Maybe can you explain from your own perspective the regulatory changes that happened early 2024, what they entail, and why do you feel like Twino is on a side where the regulatory situation doesn't affect your lending operations?
Sure. I think it more or less applies to any market, including Poland, with respect to the regulator. Like the regulator, they are what they want to do is they want to just protect the consumers ultimately. That's what is their main goal. And in that sense, us and them, we have a common goal. We also want to protect the investors. And offer them the best service possible. That being said, the regulatory landscape in all of the countries, so the direction is clear. The regulator is trying to ensure that there are no companies, or at least that there is as less as possible these companies that operate not in line with the best practices, and that we can also see in Poland. And so what's happened? They are addressing the question of these non-regulated lending companies taking money from non-regulated investment platforms where there is no regulation, and they are just trying to put more order in place. And in that sense, our business in Poland, it's a regulated business in a sense. We are in close cooperation there with the regulator as well. It's a regulated business here on the investment platform side, and we are again in close cooperation with the regulator on a daily basis. So we see no signs of threat, at least a significant or in the near future, right? We are communicating with them. They know what we are up to. We know what they want, and then so far the cooperation has been good, and I see no reason for it to change in the future. I agree that regulation needs to be there, that it's good that the regulator is looking into how other companies are obtaining the funds, and I think in the end it will be best for everyone, that the companies that are not able to sort of fulfill this regulatory threshold, they will just end their business, and the ones that are good will stay on the market.
Sure.
And I'm sure that we will be one of them.
I would argue from my perspective, being a licensed institution in Poland is, let's say, one side of the medal and of the recent adjustments. The other is the source of funds, because from my understanding, those payment institutions or lending companies in Poland, they are not allowed to fund their portfolios through crowdfunding platforms, such as Twino would be in that case. Do you think this is kind of a loophole that will be exposed sooner or later, which will force Twino to stop issuing basically consumer loans from the Twino portfolio?
I think
Twino funds?
I think that this is, of course, just my opinion, right? I'm not a magician. I cannot predict the future, right? But my opinion is that no, I wouldn't agree that it's a loophole, because there are very clear requirements there are very clear requirements who can do what, and what is allowed, what is not allowed, and the lending companies, they are not allowed to use these platforms. Let's call them like that. But for banks and payment institutions, it's not forbidden, right? And I think calling it a loophole, I understand like where the skepticism comes from, but at the same time, as I've mentioned already a lot of times and can just repeat myself once more, properly operating a regulated entity like an investment brokerage firm or a payment institution, it's quite it takes quite a lot of work, and it's quite expensive, and in that sense there's, at least I think it doesn't make sense to do it just for the sake of using it as a loophole. Like if you do it properly, otherwise it doesn't make sense. And that's also the case for net credit in Poland. Like as I mentioned, the essence, of course, is still consumer credit currently, but it's no longer a loan. Like the companies, not like those lending companies, other lending companies currently, or like the business was some like time in the past, that they offer just loans and that's it. So they offer these credit cards. The customers, they can pay with them. It's a completely different service. Like it's a different league or different product. And in that sense, at least I think that it's not. In our case, it's not appropriate to say that it's a loophole, right? Especially given that the company, I know that they are planning to expand the service offering by introducing also physical credit cards and other services related to these payments. So,
okay,
but the regulator is the regulator. If they decide to change the law also for payment institutions, then that's a different thing. That's of course something that can happen. But if you ask me, then I think that that's not something that they currently focus on. So their focus is to eliminate these bad practices with the lending companies, and I think that's what they're doing.
Okay, so the likelihood of Twino stopping the business operations in Poland, at least from financing from the Twino side, you see goes towards zero.
No, like 0 and 100. It's like never say never, right? But I would assess it as low, and even so, that's so. This question also, like there are two parts. Like one is the future growth of the company, but the other question is the investors and they getting back their investments, and these are two separate questions, and the latter, we currently see that the, let's say, portfolio and financial health is good for net credit, and yeah, I there's always risk. Right. There's no free lunch, but I would say that the likelihood of what you were asking is low currently.
From my perspective, I believe that from my understanding, net credit is, let's say, not in the danger of not continuing its business operations, but the source of funds has to come from somewhere else, and then this would lead up to lending products being dried up on the Twino peer-to-peer platform. So I think that's a bigger concern than net credit running out of the business, because it's just a matter of how you facilitate and where do you attract the funds from. But then again, from the balance sheet, for instance.
But then again, there are various ways how the financing can be attracted. Right. Currently, we are using these asset-backed securities, but that's not the only way. And there's a lot of other instruments that can be used. So if the time comes, we will definitely consider that in more depth.
But we are talking mostly, let's say, from the perspective from the investors that want to have also those Polish assets on the Twino
But also,
platform.
if we change the format of the product or the investment type, if it's still available, then also the investors can still invest. So let's say maybe it's not an asset-backed security, maybe it's a bond or some other instrument, right?